All right, guys, how you doing? My name is Renzo Vargas. I'm here at Life Modern School of Music in Miami, Florida. One of the drum teachers here at the school. So yes, follow us on Instagram under Flexo Students. We're on Instagram. You get to watch all the drum videos and everything we do here, and also you could hashtag us at LMSOM for Life Modern School of Music, and you can see all the videos there. Okay, for all the students, everything we do. I post about 6 to 7 videos a day. So this is gonna be the second series for the first video. The video before I was supposed to do this and teach how I normally teach my 7, 8 year olds. My 8 to 9, 10 year olds and up how to read quarter notes to eighth notes. There's a video before this. That's why this is the second part that I teach from whole notes, half notes to quarter notes. So I'm gonna do a little review on that, and then we're gonna start from the quarter notes to eighth notes and everything that I teach my kids on how to read and how to count eighth notes. And I do this within the first and second class. This is what I do in order for me to get them on the drum set really fast. Okay. So without further ado, here we go. All right. So the first thing I do, if you watch the first video, which I definitely recommend before watching this, you definitely need to start teaching how to play whole notes, half notes, and quarter notes. Very important. Okay, a lot of teachers just skip straight to this, and you shouldn't. Okay, so check this out. So the first thing I do is I tell them, right, a whole note is just a circle. In order to turn a whole note into a half note, we have to add that little stick is called the stem. If you didn't know, all right, it's very important that you guys tell them what is that stick is called the stem, so they remember. To turn a whole note, it's just a circle. To add it or turn it into a half note, we have to add a stem to it. Okay. So what I do is I draw a bunch of half notes, sorry. Right? Draw 4 half notes. And I ask my kids, right? I tell them, all right, what kind of notes do I have there? Automatically they all scream, oh, they're quarter notes, right? They're not. They're like, are you sure they're quarter notes? You know, you make it fun for them. And, so then they realize that they're actually half notes. And then I tell them, what do you have to do to these notes to turn them into quarter notes? So then they're all like, oh, you have to shade it in, right? So yes. So this is another thing, another little hint that I teach my students to remember. What do you have to do to a half note to turn it into a quarter note? And it's very important because they'll remember that when something is shaded in, it's a quarter note. It could either be a quarter note, a single eighth note, a single 16th note, or a single 32nd note, or it could, if they're tied up with a beam, they could be eighth notes, 2 beams, 16 notes, 3 beams, 32nd notes. I'm going to show you how I do that and how I make my students remember all these things. Very important. Okay, so we have a bunch of quarter notes, right? Now I'm going to turn a bunch of these quarter notes. I'm going to draw it a little bit smaller, right? And normally what I do is I use 2 different markers, right? I'm going to draw this. I'm going to erase this one from top. Let me draw it on the top. All right, so that was a little thing on the quarter note thing, right? So then what I do, I draw quarter notes on the top, a little bit spaced out so they could see it. Guys, the bigger you write things, the easier it'll become for the teacher to understand something. Okay? I mean the teacher, the student, for them to understand something. So I separate it and then I count it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what I do, I draw it in the bottom. Again, the quarter notes. Normally quarter notes either I draw in a black marker, as the main note, or in a really bright color, depending on what you're doing. And I make sure that I try to draw them as even as I can. Sorry for my handwriting, it's not that great. All right, and then I do different colors. Like let's say, let me do green. I think I'm gonna fill right here. Okay, so then I draw with green so they definitely see it. I draw a different note right in the middle, right? So then I ask them, all right, guys, so what kind of notes do I have there? And they're all like, oh, they're quarter notes and different color ones, whatever. Right? I'm like, yes, and how do you know? And always a lot of repetition, guys. How do you know that this is a quarter note? Because it's shaded in, because it has a stem. A lot of repetition. The more repetition you do with a student, the more they'll memorize what they are. Okay? Now, and then I'm like, so what would I have to do to these to turn them into eighth notes? Always very important with the S, because I'm not showing them single eighth notes yet. I right away get them to the eighth notes, tied up eighth notes, then single eighth notes. And then I do the single eighth notes later, and I'll show you that in a different video. Okay, so I show them like that, and I make sure I write the eighth note, the end of the eighth notes in the middle, right? And I draw a beam, right? So I show them, I'm like, look, so what happens if I do this to it? Some kids know, right? I'm like, oh, those are eighth notes. Sometimes they get confused, they think they are 16 notes, right? So what I do is I tie up 2 quarter notes with a beam. By the way, this thick line on top is called a beam, B-E-A-M. A lot of people don't know that, all right? It's not a line, it's not a stick, it's a beam, all right? So I draw it for them really big, beam. Everybody repeat after me. What is it called? A beam. And very important for them to know how many beams do you need to turn 2 quarter notes into eighth notes? 1 beam. Very important, because they think that tying them up, or they think that this is 1 beam, 2 beams, 3 beams, and that's wrong. This is 1 beam that you need to tie up quarter notes. Okay, just 1 beam. And I also teach them that you could either tie up 2 quarter notes with a beam, or you could also tie up 4 quarter notes with a beam. All right, you could tie up 4, or you could tie up 2. You cannot tie up 3 unless you're doing eighth note triplets, but we'll get into that later. I don't teach them that. I don't get them confused. Remember, they're kids, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. Don't get into eighth note triplets and stuff with them. They want to have fun. They want to get on that instrument. They want to get on the drums. So I'm doing this quick so I could teach them how to play the drums right away with this. Mind you, this is for 8, 9-year-olds, depending on how mature the 8-year-old is. But normally 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, this is what I do with them. Okay? So we have the quarter notes, right? And then I tell them, I'm like, all right, guys, you're going to help me count the downbeat. All right, everybody, help me count the downbeat for this. So they don't know what a downbeat is. They're like, what is a downbeat? All right? So what I do is I draw the downbeat and I tell them, everybody, repeat after me. The quarter note is always the downbeat. So I make them repeat it over and over. Everybody, what is the downbeat? The quarter note. The quarter note is always going to be the downbeat. And I make them repeat it over and over, do exercises with that, right? Be creative, okay? I don't have time to be showing you, but just remember that the quarter note is the downbeat. If you're a teacher, you should know this. And the ends of the eighth notes are the upbeats. And in order for them to remember this, I put a little arrow. They're the upbeats. All right, do the plus sign. And I also teach my students what does a plus sign in music mean. Now, a lot of people don't know, right? So I tell them, a plus sign in music means and I make them repeat it over and over. A plus sign in music means what? And. What is a circle in music? A whole note. What do I have to do to a circle to turn it into a half note, or the whole note into a half note? Add a stem. What do I have to do to a half note to turn it into a quarter note? We have to shade it in. So on. What does a plus sign in music mean? And. A lot of repetition, guys. The more repetition you do with your student, the more they see things. You gotta make sure that they seeing everything so they memorize it. Okay? All right, so we got the eighth notes, and I teach them how to count it, obviously, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And you teach them, too, that you could only tie up either 2 quarter notes with a beam, or you could tie up 4 quarter notes with a beam for now, right? Later on, you get it more complicated, and then you teach them 16 notes, obviously. But for now, we're getting up to eighth notes. All right, one thing I forgot to tell you guys before I got to the eighth notes, my bad, I just realized, is about before. So when I'm teaching them quarter notes, I teach them, all right, who knows what the word tempo means? All right, a lot of kids, oh, it means this, it means that, right? But who knows what the actual word tempo means? All right, and if you don't know, this is what I do with them. So what I do with them, I'm like, who knows where pizza and pasta come from? Everybody raises their hand. Oh, it comes from here, it comes from there. So most of the kids know that pizza and pasta come from Italy. So I tell them, remember that, all right? Ferraris, Lamborghinis come from Italy. A lot of kids know that, some kids don't. So whatever, just a reference of Italy, right? All right, so who could guess what music is written on? What type of language do we actually write music on? So I tell them, right, I give them the hint. Music is reading Italian. Now, I also show them, before I do that, I show them that the word tempo in Spanish means, we're in Miami, so a lot of kids here speak Spanish. So tempo in Spanish means tiempo. And then I give them the hint. What does tiempo mean in English? And a lot of them guess, oh, it means time. Like, exactly. So tempo means time. Now, who knows what this word is written on, what type of language? You know, we know that tiempo means time because it's written in Spanish. This is an Italian word that means what in English? It means time. So tempo in English means time. And I give them the references of pizza, pasta to know that, so they remember, oh, pizza, pasta come from Italy. Words, music is reading Italian. The word tempo means what? It means time in English. And then I go back to them, and I go back, I'm like, guys, so which is the only note that plays on the tempo? Right? And then they realize, oh, the only note that plays on every single tempo or the time is the quarter note. All right? In the other video, the video before this, I teach that on the quarter notes things. Okay? So yes, guys. So this is what I teach them to get up to eighth notes. And then with that, then I get them all sitting down on the drum set. You know, by this, probably around half an hour, 20 minutes, depending on the kids or how much time you have. Then I go back and I start writing the simple. Hi-hat. And you have to write this really big, okay? Write things really big, especially if you have a lot of kids in the classroom or how big your classroom is. Try to write them really big, okay? So, and write them with a really bright markers if you can. All right. So then I teach them. I'm going to do this on the second video, on the third video. This is going to be a third video because this is already really long. This is what I'm going to teach from now on. You're going to see it in the next video to get them to start learning how to play eighth notes on the drum set. Okay? Watch it on the third video.